It was 2 weeks before he died. Michael Jackson was in rehearsal for the biggest comeback of his life, 50 concerts. The world was watching, and he was exhausted, pushing himself past everything his body had left to give. His director, Kenny Ortega, finally stopped him. "Michael, we have to finish. We have enough. You have to stop." Michael looked at him and said, "You don't understand. God channels these ideas through me at night. I can't sleep because I'm so supercharged." Kenny said, "Can't God take a vacation?" And without missing a beat, Michael Jackson said, "If I'm not there to receive these ideas, God might give them to Prince." And then he laughed. 2 weeks later, Michael Jackson was dead, and Prince locked himself in his bedroom and wouldn't come out for days. But the most shocking part, you still haven't heard it. The world spent 30 years calling it a rivalry. The press built careers on it. The fans took sides. Either you were Michael or you were Prince. You couldn't be both. That was the story everyone agreed on. But the people who were actually in the room told a different story. And the story they told is this. Two men born the same year, months apart, both from tough Midwestern cities, both with strict, domineering fathers who turned their sons into instruments before they were old enough to understand what was being done to them, both believing in musical fusion, both playing with notions of race and gender and performance in ways that the industry had never seen, both idolizing Sly Stone, Stevie Wonder, James Brown, and both utterly, constitutionally incapable of sharing the number one spot. Not because they hated each other, because they understood each other too well. Think about what it means to be the most famous person on earth and still look over your shoulder. Michael Jackson had broken every record. He had sold more albums than almost anyone in history. He had changed the music industry twice before he was 30, and he was still watching Prince, still measuring, still aware that somewhere out there was the one person who might, one day, do what he did. That is not rivalry. That is the specific anxiety of greatness recognizing itself in someone else. And now everything changed. Let me take you back to where it actually began. New Year's Eve, 1983, a James Brown concert in Los Angeles. The most significant night in the history of a rivalry that never quite was. Michael Jackson was already the most famous entertainer on earth. Thriller had just changed the music industry forever. He was untouchable. Prince's 1999 was receiving widespread critical acclaim. He was the rising force, the challenger, the one the press had decided would be the next Michael Jackson, whether he wanted that framing or not. James Brown invited Michael on stage. Michael sang, he danced, he did the moonwalk. The crowd went berserk. And then, in a move that everyone who was there has described as deliberate, calculated, and slightly vicious, Michael leaned into James Brown's ear and dared him to bring Prince up next. Prince was not ready. He came on stage, attempted to play a malfunctioning guitar, tried to swing out over the crowd on a lamppost, and didn't realize it was only a prop. The lamppost crashed into the audience with Prince on it. Michael mocked him afterward, tirelessly, according to multiple witnesses. According to Quincy Jones, Prince was so devastated at being humiliated in front of his idol James Brown that he tried to run Michael over backstage with a car. Wait, don't miss this detail. What happened after that night set the pattern for everything that followed. Not hatred, something more complicated than hatred. The specific dynamic of two people who are too similar to be comfortable in the same room, who understand each other's ambitions too clearly to pretend they don't feel the competition, who recognize in each other the same wound, and who cannot decide whether that recognition makes them allies or enemies. Prince wanted what Michael had. Not just the record sales, not just the awards. He wanted the specific quality of Michael's relationship with the world, the way people loved him, the universal reach, the emotional directness. Michael made people cry. Prince made people feel things they weren't sure they were allowed to feel. They were doing different things. But Prince watched Michael and understood that what Michael did was extraordinary. And Michael watched Prince and understood that Prince was the only person who might, one day, do what he did. In 1985, Quincy Jones organized a lunch between them, the first real meeting. A strange summit, according to writer Quincy Troop, who heard about it afterward. They were so competitive with each other that neither would give anything up. They kind of sat there checking each other out, but saying very little. It was a fascinating stalemate between two very powerful performers. That same year, Prince's Purple Rain beat Michael's Thriller at the American Music Awards for Favorite Pop/Rock Album. Later that same night, Michael oversaw the recording of We Are the World. Prince had been asked to participate. He said no. Lionel Richie told the story on Jimmy Kimmel. I called him. He said, "Can I have a separate room to record in?" I said, "I can't give you a separate room. I'll put you right next to Michael." Done. Prince wouldn't be next to Michael. Not that night. Not in that song. Not in front of the entire world. Think about what that refusal cost him. Not just the goodwill. Not just the association with the most important charity single of the decade, but the specific cost of being the one person who wasn't there. The one person who looked at a room full of the greatest artists alive and said, "Not if he's next to me." That is not confidence. That is fear wearing the costume of confidence. And Michael Jackson understood it immediately, because he would have done the same thing. And the absence of Prince from We Are the World became one of the enduring footnotes of that era. The night the second greatest pop star in the world sat in a Hollywood club instead of standing next to the first. You still haven't seen the biggest surprise, the Bad Duet. In 1986, Quincy Jones tried to engineer what would have been the greatest pop collaboration in history. Michael had written a song called Bad. Quincy saw it as a duet. He arranged dinner at his house. He invited both of them. The phone calls started about 5 minutes before they were supposed to arrive. Michael called. "Hi, Q. Is Prince there yet?" "No, he's not here." "Okay." Click. Prince called. "Hey, Q. Is Michael there yet?" "No, he's not here yet." "Okay." Click. This went on for 20 minutes. Neither would be the first one there. Neither would walk into a room where the other man was already waiting. Eventually, they both arrived within seconds of each other. They sat down, they talked. They were about to have dinner, and then Prince said, "I have a question about the lyrics. Whose line is this? Your butt is mine." He looked at Michael and said, "Who's going to sing that to who? Because he sure isn't singing it to me, and I sure am not singing it to him." And that was the end of the Bad Duet. But here is what almost nobody reported at the time. Prince didn't just decline. He went into his own studio, recorded what he thought the song should be, and sent it back to Michael. This is what it should be. That was how Prince communicated. Not a phone call, a recording. I'll show you. And then, because the relationship between these two men could never be simple, Prince sent Michael a gift. A large white box. On the outside, written in marker, Camille, Prince's nickname for Michael, a taunt. Inside the box, cufflinks with Tootsie Rolls on them. Strange. Deliberately strange. Michael became convinced it was some kind of voodoo. Quincy Jones, who was there, said he wanted to keep the box because he knew Michael was going to throw it away. Michael threw it away. I can't believe this either. But keep watching. The competition never stopped. But something else was happening underneath it that the press never fully captured. In 1984, before Purple Rain was released to the public, Warner Brothers arranged a private screening for critics. Michael Jackson heard the buzz. He arranged to attend. He slipped in wearing a sequined jacket and sunglasses, sat in the last row, and watched the film that was about to challenge his dominance. About 10 minutes before it ended, he walked out. Later, someone from his entourage asked what he thought. The music. Okay, I guess. But I don't like Prince. He's rude. He reminds me of my relatives. But here is the detail that contradicts the dismissal. Michael attended 4 consecutive Purple Rain concerts, 4 nights in a row, watching Prince perform, studying him. A Quest Thompson of the Roots noticed and asked, "Why? You've already created Thriller. You've done the moonwalk. You're in the Guinness Book of Records. Why are you this curious about who is behind you?" "Then I realized," Thompson said, "that you can't be that successful without being competitive." Michael knew Prince was a serious threat. He watched him because he respected him. He respected him because he feared him. He feared him because he understood him. And here's the thing no one ever talks about. Michael Jackson reached out to Prince multiple times about collaborating, after Bad, after Dangerous. During the history sessions in 1994, Prince actually came to the studio, just once, and everyone was asked to leave the room, at Prince's request, not Michael's. No one ever knew what was said. No collaboration ever materialized. Not a single track in the vault. Just the two of them in a room, saying whatever they said and walking out on opposite sides of a door that neither of them ever fully opened. Think about what was lost in that room. 2 of the greatest musicians who ever lived, alone together, both wanting the same thing, a collaboration that would have been unlike anything the world had heard, and neither of them able to get out of their own way enough to make it happen. The legal teams, the ego, the 30 years of circling, all of it pressing against the door from both sides. They came close, several times. And every time, something got in the way. Because the thing that would have made the collaboration extraordinary, the specific tension between them, the competition, the refusal to yield, was also the thing that made it impossible. In 2006, Will.I.Am arranged for Michael to attend one of Prince's Las Vegas shows. Prince knew exactly where Michael was sitting. He performed, walked off the stage, moved through the crowd with his bass, playing it as he walked, and made his way directly to where Michael Jackson was seated. He stood in front of him and played the bass in his face. Hard, deliberately, in front of everyone. The next morning, Michael opened the door to his house and said, "Why was Prince playing the bass in my face? He's always been a meanie. He's just a big meanie." But later, through Will.I.Am, he sent a message. He wanted Prince to join him on the This Is It comeback tour. 50 concerts, the biggest return in the history of pop music. Prince turned him down. Michael, according to a source close to him, was disappointed. And then, a few months later, in the rehearsal room where Kenny Ortega was trying to get him to stop, Michael said, "If I'm not there to receive these ideas, God might give them to Prince," and laughed. This is what no headline ever captured, because what that line contains is not competition. It is something much closer to recognition. Michael Jackson, in the last weeks of his life, exhausted and driven beyond what his body could sustain, was still thinking about Prince, still measuring himself against the one person who had come closest to doing what he did, still laughing about it. That is not rivalry. That is the specific affection of someone who has spent their entire career looking over their shoulder at the one person they couldn't shake, and who had, somewhere along the way, started to be glad that person was there. Ask yourself what it means that in all the years of competition and silence and missed collaborations and voodoo boxes and bass guitars and faces, neither of them ever said the definitive thing. Neither of them ever said, "He is better than me," or "I am better than him." They circled each other for 30 years without ever landing. Ask yourself what it means that when Michael died, Prince didn't go on stage and dedicate a show to him. He didn't post a tribute. He went to his bedroom and locked the door. Now everything you've seen so far means nothing, because the last chapter of this story takes place on a rooftop in Montreux, Switzerland. Prince had been in rehearsal for the Montreux Jazz Festival when the news came that Michael Jackson was dead. He immediately canceled rehearsal, sent his band home, locked himself in his room for days. When he finally emerged, they did a few more rehearsals. The shows happened, and afterward, at 2 in the morning, Prince and Travis Smiley walked out onto the rooftop of the presidential suite where Prince was staying. The Swiss Alps in front of them, the sun coming up behind them, and Prince talked until the sun rose. All he talked about was Michael Jackson. His genius, his gift, his showmanship, the specific quality of what Michael did that nobody else had done and nobody else would do. He talked and talked. Travis Smiley said he barely said 10 words that entire night. He just sat and listened and held on to every word. Because in that moment, on that rooftop, with the Alps in front of them and Michael Jackson dead for a few weeks, Prince finally said everything he had never said while Michael was alive. The respect, the admiration, The specific way that Michael's existence had shaped his own career, not as a threat, but as a standard. The reason he practiced harder. The reason he pushed further. The reason he could never quite relax. Because somewhere out there, Michael Jackson was doing the same thing and doing it at a level that Prince, for all his genius, understood was genuinely singular. He talked until the sun came up. And Travis Smiley said, "I will never forget it as long as I live." Ask yourself what it means to spend 30 years circling someone, competing with them, sending them voodoo boxes and playing bass in their face and refusing to stand next to them in a charity recording, and then to sit on a rooftop in Switzerland after they are gone and talk about them until sunrise. That is not rivalry. That never was. That was two people who understood each other completely, who had built their careers in opposition to each other, who had never been able to say the direct thing, who had met in hotel rooms and recording studios and arenas and never quite arrived at the conversation they were actually trying to have. And then one of them died, and the other sat on a rooftop and finally said it. Michael Jackson and Prince, born the same year, both from the Midwest. Both defined an era that will never come again. Both carrying the specific wound of a childhood that was never allowed to exist. They called it a rivalry. They were wrong. It was the longest conversation two people ever had without speaking directly to each other. And it ended on a rooftop in Switzerland at sunrise, with one of them talking and the other one gone.